Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Big Sky Now podcast. I'm your host, Josh Amick. With a little revised panel today, we don't have Ian, but we still have Fritz, John, and Mark here with us. We're going to jump right into it. And the game of the week, which we all thought would be the game of the week, turned out to be not so close of a game, with UC Davis pulling away in the second half on the road against a raucous crowd at the Grizz Stadium. And they lost 30-14. This game showed that Montana's still using the two quarterback sets, and it doesn't look like it's working too well. Do you think that Montana goes with a certain guy going forward and gets out of this two quarterback set, John?
Well, listening to Coach Houck in the post game, it really seems like it's all just a matter of feel at this point, which I don't know how great that is for them. But I know personally I would stick with one at this point in the season. You know, this last week it really kind of showed me that they don't have a set leader at that position. It feels like last year you had Clifton McDowell, who established himself. He took that position. He ran with it. Wasn't going to let anybody else take it from him. This year, it just kind of seems like it's up in the air. I personally feel like if you're going to pick one, I would go with Ayat at this point, just for the pure fact of he brings in a different aspect into the run game, being able to have that quarterback running. If your running backs get shut down, you can go to the read options, gives you an extra wrinkle. And B, he's a redshirt freshman. The transfer portal, you don't really want to lose a guy like that you can develop over 4 years. I don't know how much Bobby's going to think about the transfer portal and that. I know he hates it, but I think that would play into my decision, at least, in wanting to keep Ayat happy.
All right. Yeah. Well, I think we're going into that territory where if you have two quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks, because that was not a very effective second half by the Grizz. I think Logan Fife, when you crunch the numbers, in fact, Frank Gogola down at the Missoulian did crunch him. He's been more effective, statistically anyway. They've played about the same amount of time through 10 games, and Fife has the edge. And he seems to read the defenses quicker and get rid of the ball quicker. As John mentioned, Ayat's a lot better with his legs. And not that Fife's terrible, but Ayat's really run the ball well and been pretty spectacular at times with his legs. But as far as the transfer portal goes, you know, I think Fife had a pretty interesting tweet Saturday that he later took down. And
what did he say?
It didn't say anything. It was kind of a shrugging meme type thing. And because you know, that's not to say he didn't have a pretty bad interception in the end zone at the end of the first half too. But you know, I think he's shown he has the edge. But John has a good point. I mean, it's been a lot of quarterbacks come through Montana in Bobby Houck's tenure. None of them have started more than a couple of years. It seems like Eastern always has a guy or two, and it'd be cool if the Grizz kind of latched onto that and found a guy that they could stick with for 2 and 3 seasons and really started dealing on people. Hasn't happened for a long time, and so yeah, I'll be watching the portal too when the season's over.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, you start off, maybe give Bobby Houck a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. I mean, he's won a few more football games than any of the 4 of us, and, you know, 5 with Ian. But yeah, it seems like this going back and forth is kind of hard to keep a rhythm. I mean, it seems like maybe you just pick one and then go with them. And then if you replace him with the other guy, then you kind of go with that guy the rest of the game. Because it seems like you have one guy in one series and the next guy in the next series and back to the one guy and stuff like that. It seems like it's hard for them to get a rhythm. And so it's a tough call because they're both, you know, pretty good. They do a little bit different things. Fife, a little more of a passer. Ayat, you know, can run a little bit more. And so I hadn't really thought about the keeping them happy for transfer portal wise, but I guess that's something to factor in.
Yeah.
I mean, I know they have other ones, you know, that the Flowers kid is a true freshman from Rigby. So he's coming up. So I don't know how long until he's ready, but I guess you can always find another quarterback in the transfer portal if that's what they want to do, if these guys aren't happy with playing part of the time. But that's what I would do, is pick one and go with them. And then if you replace them during the game, stay with the other for the rest of the game.
Yeah, Mark was telling me before we started recording that Bobby Hawk was basically like, I don't care that what you think about me running 2 quarterbacks. And I think the transfer portal is a very big point here because you have a great freshman or redshirt freshman in Ayat, but with transfer portal, people are constantly changing. So how many people are going to want to come play for Montana if this is what he's showing, where he's just going to go with whatever the hot hand may be or whatever is in Hawk's mind? And also, if you're bringing in Ayat to use his legs, doesn't that also kind of come predictable, Fritz, don't you think? Like, if he's a guy used for his legs and he comes in for a certain series, the defense can easily say, like, hey, we're going to watch the QB spy a lot more this time, as opposed to Fife is in, and then you're playing them for everything that Montana does. And don't you think that's something that the defense catches on to as well?
Well, yeah, I mean, and the other side of the coin is Bobby thinks when you switch quarterbacks, you put more stress on a defense in a certain way. I mean, he ran option part of the time for a few seasons and just to put stress on the other team. Fact of the matter is that the offense just as a whole has regressed the last few weeks, just hasn't been the same powder keg that we saw in the first half of the season. And, at that time, both quarterbacks playing well, but Saturday they didn't run very well and didn't set up the pass very well or the play action. They don't run their middle screen like they were early on. They're getting blitzed into. And Gilman, as talented as he is, couldn't find any running room. I think he had one 14-yard run and ended with 21 yards rushing. So there's some issues there. And, playing 2 quarterbacks might be part of it. Maybe it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, Fritz, if I could jump into you
mentioned
McGoggle crunching the numbers on the quarterbacks. He crunched the numbers on the running game this last week, 77 yards on the ground, and then the week before with Cal Poly. If you combine both those weeks together, that would still be the worst rushing game that Montana's had this year. So the last 2 weeks, the running game's just disappeared.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point, because how much of that has to do with the quarterback play and how much does that have to do with them just not getting the push that they normally get? I feel like we could do a whole episode of what's going on with the Grizz, but we are going to move on to the other Big Sky teams. Idaho State, I found this very interesting. They won in Ogden for the first time since 1984, way before me and John's time. But they beat Weber State 43-35. It was a great showing by both quarterbacks. Got to give credit to Weber State's Munoz as well. He played great. Kobe Tracy was out of this world as well. But what else stood out in this game to you, Fritz?
Well, that was the first one in Ogden since 84, and I called it. That's the first thing I want to point out. Yeah. And then, no, I thought there was some pretty unfortunate pass coverage or lack thereof. It was hilarious in the first half. Munoz, who sidearms the ball at times, overthrew a wide open receiver. There was a receiver, and I think there was an antelope. That's how open he was. And he overthrew him. And they ran the exact same play, and the guy was just as open, and he hit him for a touchdown. And I think Idaho State just started strong and got things going. I think the quarterback is really good. I like that kid a lot. And I think Munoz he hasn't got skinnier since the Grizz game when he played so well. And they just got down too far and couldn't catch up because Idaho State's got it going on offense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just the fact that Idaho State won on the road at Weber, like I said, first time since '84, which I think was their national. When was their national title year? I think was that
82.
Year? 82. Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, 81.
Okay, that's right. Yeah, so it's been a while, obviously, and that's a game, obviously, that they haven't won in recent years, and so for them to go on the road and beat Weber's a beatable team. That's a win for the taking if they could do it, and credit to ISU for going in there and taking it. That's just another step, forward for that program. Other than that, I mean, if you had college fantasy football leagues, that would have been a great one to be a part of because, Tracy had great numbers, 348 through the air, 4 touchdowns, no sacks, no interceptions, a lot of yards against Weber. Idaho State doesn't play a whole lot of defense, so Munoz had a lot of yards there too, 315 with 4 touchdowns, and Weber ran for 222 against Idaho State. So a lot of offense, but probably the big takeaway is Idaho State winning a game like that on the road, which they haven't done much of in recent years.
Yeah, it kind of feels like Idaho State might be reaching a turning point this season. I don't know how well they'll be able to keep it up afterwards. I know Tracy's a senior, so you do lose that quarterback play after this season. But yeah, he's been definitely finding his rhythm late on. I don't remember watching him against Sacramento State, and he made some big time throws in that one, especially in overtime.
Oh yeah.
So, but yeah, it just kind of felt like it was also another Weber State shooting themselves in the foot game because you had the fumble right away, you had a missed field goal, and those kind of things can turn into the difference in a tight game late on. I mean, I know it's just the first drive of the game when you fumble the ball, but it plays for the entire game. It's an effect. So, and giving
Bad
up
punt
points off
snap
of that.
too. Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, it's interesting for me this year with the Big Sky. It feels like the emphasis on defense has gone away, and it's all about the offense this year.
It's like the 1984 all over again. Merrill Hodge and everybody's scoring a ton of points, and nobody's running the tackle play very well, except for Davis. Davis is doing it, and the Cats.
Another game that was a little more high scoring than probably most of us thought, and was a lot closer than expected was Idaho pulling out the win, but just 39-30 over Portland State, who was struggled throughout the season. Any word on why Jack Lane didn't start in this game, Mark, and what happened with the Vandals defense that was once probably one of the top units in the Big Sky?
Yeah, well, a lot of times we find this out on Saturdays. During the week, Coach Eck talked about Lane as if he was going to start, and then Saturday, as it turns out, he'd hurt his wrist in the Eastern game, and so he was out. And their running quarterback, Rocco Koch, was out with an injury from that game, so that left Jack Wagner as their only quarterback that suited up in that game. As it turns out, that was all the Vandals needed. If you know who Jack Wagner is from his musical career, you know what that reference was. If not, Google it. Yeah, see, Fritz knows. Anyway, but anyway, that was why he didn't play, and who knows if they'll be any of them will be healthy this week. I guess we'll find out Saturday. As for the defense, sometimes you kind of play the first half to get to the second half. You kind of do one thing in the first half and you make your adjustments. And seeing like what they in the first half, that Sasha Ray was able to scramble around on them and make plays and find open receivers and stuff like that. Second half, they went in at halftime, made adjustments and tightened up their coverages on him, and maybe put a spy on Sasha Ray at times too. And so they only gave up 3 field goals in the second half. So yeah, it's 30 points they gave up, but 21 were in the first half and only 9 in the second half. So they did make some adjustments.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah, I feel like Portland State deserves a bit of credit here too, because Dante Chachre has been playing out of his mind the last couple of weeks. I mean, 19 of 25 throwing in this one with 2 touchdowns. He was shut down though on the ground, like Mark was mentioning with the halftime adjustments and everything. The Vandals kept him to just 25 yards on 18 carries, so that takes out the dual threat aspect of his game. But Portland State just played solid all around and got a couple turnovers that helped them out. Turnover on downs in the second quarter. There was the fumbled punt in the third, and I think Idaho deserves a little bit of credit too with the gutsy 2-point conversion on their last touchdown to kind of seal it away with 2 minutes to go instead of making it an 8-point game. I don't know if I would have called that, but Coach Eck went for it.
Oh yeah, that was like I think they lined up for 2, and then they had a procedure penalty, and then they lined up for 1, and then somebody pulled one of the offensive linemen aside, so they were back at the 1 yard, and then they went for 2 and got it. I actually thought Idaho's defense played pretty well throughout. They really did a good job keeping Sasha from running loose. He was spinning it pretty good. And like John mentioned, they gave it the ball downs at their own 44. Went for it on 4th at their own 44, down 14-0 with a lot of game left in the first half, and gave up a touchdown. So now it's 21. It was 14-14. Now it's 21-14. And between that and some other lapses, the punt that hit a Idaho blocker, Portland State converted that into 3. I didn't have Deshaun Buchanan, I think you might be down to like one running back at Idaho too. He runs for 212. I didn't have that on my bingo card. And I think Portland State is the best 2-7 team in the FCS. They should have beat UC Davis. They could have beat Idaho, and they'll be dangerous Saturday when they come play the Grizz.
Yeah, we'll see a lot of good points. Just goes to show you that the scoreboard doesn't tell the whole story if you watched it like these guys did. Another team that keeps on rising is NAU beating Cal Poly 31-14. They now improved to 4-2 in the Big Sky, and with matchups against Northern Colorado on the road and Eastern left at home, what is going to be the biggest factor that the Lumberjacks get to that 6-win Big Sky Conference win total?
Yeah, well, I think that the biggest factor, just looking at the remaining schedule with you and Northern Colorado and Eastern Washington, is not playing down to their opponent's level. I feel like that a lot of teams can kind of have that. They see the opponent on the schedule, and they go out there and they just do what they think they need to do instead of going out there and trying to make a statement like they should every week. And I think that plays in twice as much when you look into the selection for the playoffs. I mean, if they get these last 2 wins, puts them at 8-4. I know we've seen teams get shafted before in terms of the playoff. Look at, last season. But 8 wins should put them in a good position, but especially if they can handle things against Northern Colorado nicely and then get Eastern Washington at home in that final game of the season.
Yeah, I think the same thing. They should hold serve. Why do I have this bad feeling that they won't? But they should hold serve. They play well at home. Northern Colorado's not very good. I think I watched 2 drives of their game this past week and gave up on them. And if they went out, that's 7 D1 wins, and an 8-4 record. And if they went out, it's 6-2 in the Big Sky, which is probably pretty likely, barring an upset in Bozeman in a couple weeks, to put them ahead of the Grizz, who beat them in the Big Sky standings. So I think we could be looking at 5 teams in the Big Sky. If it's only 4, row for the Grizz. So.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I've read some stuff on them that maybe they're a bubble playoff team at this point. So it's probably going to come down to that Eastern game and how motivated is Eastern, making that trip down there for their last game at whatever record they are at, 3-8 or 4-7 and with nothing to play for. I think it's somewhere that none of NAU's wins have been over. They don't have any ranked wins, so they haven't beaten any ranked FCS teams. So that might work against them. They, like we talked about last week, I think they might get UC Davis this year, but we'll see. We'll see. I don't know if they have any inside information if that tells them that, hey, you beat Eastern, you win your last 2 and beat Eastern, you're in the playoffs, or maybe you're still not with that. So I don't know. It'll be a very interesting, like we talked about before. It might depend on some of the 4th and 5th place teams in other conferences that, whether NAU gets in or not.
Yep.
Yeah, you guys kind of answered my question. I was going to say is if both Montana and NAU finish 8-4 and 6-2 in the Big Sky, who gets in? But I know a lot of these voters tend to go with the strength of schedule, and I think Montana's only loss that you kind of scratch your head on is against Weber State. Other than that, I think everything else has been going in their favor.
Let's move on to number 5.
All right. Montana State easily won over Sacramento State, setting up another great matchup for this upcoming weekend against UC Davis to determine basically who wins the Big Sky regular season. Did Davis's road performance against Montana kind of change your outlook on this game, or do you think it's the Bobcats game still to lose, John? All right.
I still think it's the Bobcats game to take. That's going to be my opinion for any game that Montana State plays until someone shows me otherwise. They haven't really faced many issues in conference play this year. I think their closest game was 14 points against Eastern Washington on the road. I do think, though, that Davis will pose some problems to them. Hastings and Larison out of the backfield can do a lot of havoc, especially with how Larison is used both in the passing game and in the running game. But stopping that Bobcats offense is going to be very difficult. They have talent all over the field, and they've proved it this year. be it running with Malott, running with the running backs, throwing it out to Rohan Jones. They can do it all.
Yeah, I agree. Nothing's really changed my opinion about how that game's going to come out. I know the Connors boys will make it. They'll put up a more of a fight. Rex and Porter Connors will put up more of a more resistance than Sac State's defense did. Those are a couple of really nice players. But yeah, MSU is still my favorite.
Yeah, I guess it changed the way I look at it, maybe just a little bit. I mean, I was impressed with UC Davis's defense on Saturday. I mean, you can't really overstate how big a win that was for Davis to go into Missoula in that environment and win convincingly. I mean, I know Weber did it too. They went in there and won, but that was a little different. There wasn't quite the same build up to that game, the national television and stuff like that. It was more like Weber kind of jumped on them early and it was like, oh, here we are in a shootout. But, this one, the Grizz were ready. Everybody was ready. They knew what they had to do. And UC Davis still took it to them. Okay. But, I guess, that said, kind of like what you guys say, if Montana State does what Montana State does, then maybe it doesn't matter about what UC Davis does.
Yeah, we'll find out this weekend. We'll have a lot more to talk about that game coming on the episode that we drop on Thursday for you. But as far as this episode goes, that's going to wrap up things for us for the Big Sky Now podcast. Join us again on Thursday. We'll break down the games for the upcoming weekend, and we'll see who sides for UC Davis or who sides for the Bobcats in that crucial matchup. We'll see you all on Thursday. Thanks to my panel as always. And until then, take care.